And so I think knowing the numbers and just really diving in and making sure that, okay, what's my lowest acquisition cost or my easiest to get a lead, right? All the way through what's my best close rate. I mean, you need to have those broken down, because if you sell multiple products, your sales reps don't sell each product the exact same way. They just don't. You have some that might sell roofing better, some sell siding better. And then really, what can your crew produce? And so you got to look at all of those things and make the decision. Numbers don't lie. You can distort numbers, but they don't lie.
This is the Wealthy Contractor Podcast, brought to you by G4 Marketing. Interviews with today's top home improvement entrepreneurs about marketing, sales, money, mindset, and lifestyle. Now, here's your host, Brian Kaskavalcian.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Wealthy Contractor Podcast. This is Brian Kaskavalcian with G4 Marketing Group, and I have a very interesting conversation for all of you today. With me is Randy Hann from Contract Exteriors. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you for having me.
So, well, before we get into Randy, let me do a quick pitch for the 7 Secrets book. If you do not have a copy, what are you waiting for? Grab a copy. It's free. I buy the book. I just ask you to pay the delivery fee. The way to get it is just go to thewealthycontractor.com, and you will see a button there that says get the book, and you can get the book there. Again, I buy the book. You pay for shipping. And I do that because the information that's there is valuable. It comes from not just my experience, but my experience with cool people like our guest today, like Randy. There are certain things that they all have in common. And so that's what the 7 Secrets book is all about. So with that, with the pitch out of the way there, Randy, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad to be here as well.
Cool. So Randy is in Myrtle Beach, got a really cool business. So we're going to talk about something interesting here today. We're going to start with Randy's background. And one of the things that we talk about here with people is revenue for vanity, profit for sanity. And sometimes you gotta get rid of some bad business to allow good business in. Let's just leave that as the setup, Randy. So give everybody like the 2-minute version of your story, and then we'll kind of jump into what we mean by getting rid of bad business.
Sure. So unlike most that I've met, I actually went to school for construction and actually have a degree in construction management and worked for national builders right out of college. And, when the downturn started happening in 2008, I saw an opportunity to just start a business because I just saw a void. But coming from that new construction world, I went to the new construction world, and we really started our business, really doing work for builders, and grew the business over time, kept on growing it. And we grew to a very large business in the Carolinas. I think at that point we had 6 offices. But there was a moment that I had when I realized that that was not the future for us. So we've always done siding and decking and roofing. And we were always doing remodeling, but it was our small part of our business. And really about almost now 4 years ago, I had that moment. It was actually 3 years ago. It was 2018. And I just had that moment where that was not where we needed to be, and remodeling is just what we needed to focus on. And scared a lot of people when I said, that's it, we're going to cut 75% of our business and focus just on remodeling. And for me, it was the clearest decision as you could ever imagine. For most, it was like, why would you step away from all of that volume, all of that revenue? And fast forward 2 years later, we had our best year ever on our books. And if it ever questioned whether or not the decision was right, the numbers don't lie.
So Do you mind sharing what those numbers were? Because yeah, they were substantial, but do you mind sharing what they
Yeah,
were?
that's fine.
You don't have to, but
Yeah, no. So when we at our highest point, we were about $35 million. And this year we're going to do about 6.5 million this year.
yep,
So that's a large drop off, for
yep.
sure. This is officially our first year not doing any new construction whatsoever. So
Yeah, good for you. So what's interesting is, so you are, and this number you don't have to share, but you are making a whole lot more money, a whole lot more on 6.5
yes,
than you ever did on 30, 35.
correct.
Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
Because this is where this is something we haven't really talked about it too much on the podcast, but it is private conversations that I have with people. Just had the conversation, by the way, it was either last week or the week before. Small company, got into siding, and siding is an interesting business. It's a larger ticket, takes a little bit longer, lots of moving parts. You could lose your rear end on siding, and especially in the environment that we're in today. And that happened for them. They had 6 jobs on the books. It was a nice chunk of business. They lost money on every single one of them.
Yeah.
And so we had a conversation about, well, what is your most profitable line of business? And they happened to say roofing. And I said, well, how long does it take you to get material? 2 weeks. I'm like, oh, okay. And so stop advertising siding and go start knocking doors to get roofing business. So that was just recently, but this is a common conversation. So what, aside from the obvious, what kind of led to that decision? Because I know, how long were you were in growth mode for what, about 7 years, 6, 7 years?
Yeah, probably good 7 years.
Yeah.
We had a hurricane here previous to really that happened, and we didn't have the effect of the hurricane. We had flooding, and it shut pretty much a lot of our business down. And in our Myrtle Beach division and Wilmington division at that time, to where we didn't work for 6 to 8 weeks because the roads everything was just flooded. And it came to that winter time, and I was actually working on a house December 23rd. And I was by myself, no employees were with me. And I'm like, at that point we had 90 some employees, and I'm like, hold on, this just doesn't make sense. And it started that thought process of we need to make some changes, right? And so I'm doing all of this for the builder's pocketbook, not our pocketbook.
Yeah.
And we started looking at everything, and builder work really takes a lot of your attention. They're just needy. They just want you there. And so the problem was that held us back in remodeling, because we were always so focused on the builders, because it was such a big part of our business. And when we stopped doing that builder work, we've really been able to focus now on our business, and it's really starting to take shape now, for sure.
At that time, were you also doing residential?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
About what percentage of your business was it?
We were probably 90% residential. It was just residential builders, and then just remodeling.
No, I mean, I'm sorry, residential retail, not builders.
Retail was probably about 25%.
25%.
Yeah.
Okay. So essentially what happened, so you pulled an 80-20.
Mm-hmm.
You said, okay, so 80% of my profit, or maybe more, was coming from just 20% of my customers.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question then becomes, well, why do I need the other customer? You built up a really nice size business. I mean, you had 6 offices, you had 90 employees. And you kind of walked away. You went down to, did you go down to one location or no?
We have 2 locations, Charleston and Myrtle Beach.
Yeah. That's tough, because we're so ingrained with that revenue, 30, 35 million. I mean, that's like one of the biggest companies in the country.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough knowing that we were going to lose some really good people.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost over that time probably some people that just really liked new construction, that didn't want to do what I wanted to do as the business. And but they're still successful and still keep in touch with them. They didn't like dealing with homeowners. They liked the consistency of what new construction brought on their side of the world. So
yeah. So I always talk about decisions are instant. You make the decision, and once you make that decision, as long as you're committed, man, you go. So when you were on December 23rd, that's crazy. You're actually out working. You have 90 employees and you're out working all by yourself. You made the decision. So what you have to do next?
So, the next one is I sort of came back and started talking to our senior team at that point. A lot of them were sort of shell shocked, like why, I think some of them was because they knew that meant they weren't going to be around much longer. And we got a lot of buy-in from our key employees. And really it was just, I think the biggest shockwave was the manufacturer world and the supplier world. They're like, oh my goodness, what's going on with this company? And the great part is we have had great relationships with our partners over time, and the ones that we had truly understood what we were doing, and they're still with us today. So that's the great part.
So did you just stop bidding on those jobs?
Yeah. So just stop bidding and/or told the builder that we won't start another job as of this date, right? So,
okay.
And that was a business decision because some builders then held money. They didn't pay us money, so that because they said, well, you won't come back and out of your warranty, so we're just going to hold your last month, all of this check.
Yeah.
And so that became a little bit of a hurdle we had to overcome that we didn't see in that thought process, but we overcame it. So
did you, that first year, 2019, what was cash flow like? Were you okay with cash flow, or did that put a strain?
It was to go from, I think that year we went from 35 million down to like around $18 million. So to drop off that much, yeah, it was tough. Put a lot of strains on employees, on business, on relationships. But I've had a lot of good people that I've been able to reach out to in the industry. Guys like Brian and John from Outback Deck, I think they've been huge.
Yeah.
One that doesn't know it, but I waited for this here, is Charlie Gandell. I don't talk to Charlie outside of seeing him at a conference, but I got his number and reached out to him probably when I was at my worst point in that cash flow crunch. And I knew he went through the same thing.
Yeah.
And he talked me out of a bad situation.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Charlie's an amazing guy.
Yeah.
He's gonna, by the time this is released, Charlie will be retired.
Oh, wow.
Can you believe that?
No, I can't.
Yeah.
But he's earned it. He's earned it.
He has earned it. Yeah. He's helped a lot of people, and he's going to continue to help. So you made some phone calls, you talked to some people, which is, that's what you do. A lot of people think, well, I got to figure everything out on my own.
Yeah.
You didn't do that.
No, not at all. Not at all. I think, I could keep on naming them off, like Scott Siegel has helped out tremendously, John Martindale, but I think Brian and John for me were my biggest two, every ounce, business coach, mental coach, they didn't know it. They were just who they are, They helped out a lot.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Let's pause here for a quick break. Are you ready to accelerate your business success in 2022? If you answered yes, then you'll want to listen closely to this special invitation. We're calling all home improvement and home service business owners to join us at Accelerate Live 2022, happening in beautiful sunny South Florida on February 15th and 16th. This is the only home improvement event guaranteed to be profitable for you on day one. To get more information, please go to www.accelerateevent.com. Discounted pricing is available right now. So if you want to save big, go to www.accelerateevent.com, and for additional savings, enter coupon code WEALTHY22 at checkout. Remember, this event is 100% guaranteed. If you don't feel it was profitable enough for you on day one, not only will we refund you your ticket money, but we will also give you $1,000 back to cover your time and your travel. So don't delay. Go to www.accelerateevent.com and secure your ticket today. Now back to this week's episode.
So when we talk about getting rid of business, and in your case, it just happened to be commercial work, and you and I both know somebody that's kind of in the same pickle that you were in, not at the same volume level. But when there's something that's dragging you down, how do you, for you, it was very obvious because it was such a big chunk of your business, but I'm sure that you've had conversations with other people. And how do you recognize the signs of, like siding? Maybe siding is not the right thing for your business.
Mm-hmm.
How do you recognize some of the signs?
So I think the first thing is you've got to know your numbers and have them broken down to so many different ways. So when I say that, it's just not, you got to have what your acquisition cost is for your lead cost, to all the way through what your profit per day is on each product category. Because you might think, man, I love roofing is my most profitable one. But if you don't really know what your profit per day is and don't have it broken down on all those different levels, then you might be spending your time on the thing that really isn't moving the needle. You might think it does, but it really isn't, And so I think knowing the numbers and just really diving in and making sure that, okay, what's my lowest acquisition cost or my easiest to get a lead, right? All the way through what's my best close rate. I mean, you need to have those broken down, because if you sell multiple products, your sales reps don't sell each product the exact same way. They just don't. You have some that might sell roofing better, some sell siding better. And then really, what can your crew produce? And so you got to look at all of those things and make the decision. Numbers don't lie. You can distort numbers, but they don't lie.
Right.
So if you just take them for what they are, and I think that's really what I looked at when I made the decision, is the numbers. Just it was as clear can be, and we've done this now that we've shifted away, when we used to do more of additions and stuff like that. And this year we stopped. We were just like, it makes no sense whatsoever. It takes way too long. You can't keep a customer engaged right now, because we're not set up for it. So we just said, that's it, we're done, and it's been bad. We've gotten better because of it.
So it's interesting. You just brought up something that, again, this is a conversation that I've had a number of times this year. You just brought up profit per day. Can we talk a little bit more about that? Because a lot of people don't look at that number. And I'm actually really excited that you brought that up.
Sure.
Because it's an important thing to consider when running these types of businesses. So can you talk a little bit about profit per day?
Yeah. So, when I just finished our budget. Well, I worked on it all fall, but when I was putting it together, we actually know our average duration for each product line, or estimated duration. And so what I do is I take that out and divide that out by, all right, if I know I'm going to do 80 jobs and I know that my revenue is going to be this and my bottom line is this on that. Okay, now I'm going to divide that out by the total amount of days, average days, and I'm going to get how many profit dollars I'm going to get per day. The great part about that is, when I went through this, is roofing wasn't a big part of our business going into next year. But this is where numbers don't lie. It's our number one profit per day. And all of a sudden I was like, all right, I guess I'm shifting what we're going to do. And we really need to make a push at windows and doors, because it is where we can be the most successful and make the biggest impact on the business.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So you mentioned their additions,
Mm-hmm.
jobs that take anything more than what, 3, 4, maybe 5 days at the most, anything more than that tends to, your profit per day seems to go off a cliff. Do you find the same thing?
We're luckily we're pretty good with our siding. Our average siding takes about 2 weeks to complete.
Okay.
And it's actually number 2 for us.
Okay. Well, you figured it out. Yeah.
Yeah. We've done hardy for long enough that we've got it sort of dialed in.
Yeah.
It starts with selling at the right price. So we have to be at the right margin to get that profit per day to be where it is. And I think that's sort of what's helped us. So if in doing it this year, what I learned is if their profit per day is below a certain line, we almost need to not even, like, there should be no spend on. If we get a lead, okay, that's great. But it's not going to be our focus whatsoever.
Yeah. So just real quick, Randy, because I think for the listener, this is interesting to think about with their business. So we talk a lot here about, and privately, when people talk about the GC business, the design build business, there are a few people out there that know how to make that business work.
Oh, yeah.
You and I know somebody, Tom Capizzi, who's amazing at it, but it's a tough business to make work.
Mm-hmm.
Siding can fall into that. So you say 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of people, they'll lose money on a 2-week job, but they just don't know it. And so just as a real quick, let's just do a real quick, simple calculation. And we'll use gross margin. Let's not use net. We'll use gross margin. So if we've got a gross margin on siding of, say, 40%, which is not good, but let's just say it's 40%. And the average job there, let's say it's a $30,000 job. So 40% gross margin gives you $12,000. So if that job now takes you, let's say it takes 10 days, so now you divide your 12,000 into 10, and that gives you $1,200 in gross margin per day on that job. Did I do the math right? Yep. I think so. Yeah. All right. So now that's one thing to measure. So now you look at like roofing, and we say, okay, roofing average is 10,000 job, but let's say it's at a 50% gross margin, right? Mm-hmm. So now we're at $5,000, and that job takes 2 days. So you take the 5,000 divided by 2, and you get 2,500. So now you've got $2,500 profit per day versus $1,200 profit per day. Now you can make both of them work net wise, but I think it's critically important for people to understand what those numbers are. I did this exercise with somebody that's got a 2-month average job cycle, and the profit got down to like a couple $100 a day. Yeah. And we're looking at this, and I'm saying to them, and you're wondering why you're not making money, so go into something that is quicker, that's quicker turn. We don't want to talk too many people out of being in the design build business because we need them desperately. But but that is a really important thing to consider there. I'm a mindset guy. So, how long do you think, well, let me see. How do I ask you this? How did your ego deal with going from 30 million to 18 to 6.5?
I think because of when you change the cash flow and all of the strain and stress, the ego went out the door pretty darn quick.
Yeah.
Because I was dealing with other stuff, right? I look at companies now and they're like, oh, I'm at $10 million. And I'm like, that's my first, before my reaction would have been like, all right, I got to get there. Now my first reaction is, okay, but really what's your bottom line?
Yeah.
Like, that's great to say that you're $10 million, but if you're at 1%, that's okay. Like, that's not what I want,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so it's interesting, because the ego is what gets in the way of making that switch. And I think what happens is you got to look at, I was having a conversation with my 92-year-old father last night. They're here visiting. And I like, he knows what we went through, you know, broke at 40 and moved to Miami and started all over again. And so I like to make him feel like, hey, we're good now. You know, we figured a couple things out. We're good now. So we were talking about net, you know, making money. And I told him, you know, this year it looks like we're going to make this amount. And he like looks at me and goes, that's net. And I'm like, yeah, that's net. I'm beyond the point of what's the top line. I'm really more focused on the bottom line. And he's like, oh, wow. Oh, that's really good. And, you know, and so we had a little conversation around that as much as I could with a 92-year-old. But yeah, I'm the same way. It's like, I talk to people a lot and they tell, oh, I do 10 million. I do 9 million. Although I don't get it as much as I used to, because some people listen to the podcast and they know my next question is going to be like yours. Well, how much money did you make? Did you make any money? But yeah, you get over the volume part pretty damn quick once you start to see money going into the bank.
Yeah.
You got to be more excited about the money going into your personal bank account than the money that goes into the business account, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's great when you're at a conference to say you're this number, right?
Yeah.
And I find, especially when you're younger, right? As you're older, it's just like, okay, I'm trying to stay away from number talks unless I know the person, because I just know we're not on the same page, and that's okay, you know? And I think life changes you. You know, when you're in your 30s, you want to go conquer the world. When you're in your 40s, no, you just want to have the best life you possibly can. And you know, there's some 30-year-olds, don't get me wrong, it's not just that date, but I think when I was in the 30s, it was like, no, I'm going to go take on the world. You know, now it's just like, no, I'm really happy with a $7 to $10 million business as long as the bottom line's here, and that's really all I care about. You know.
Yeah, and hopefully by having this conversation, you and I can help some of those people that are stuck in that volume, and the profit will show up somewhere at some point. To, it's okay to be small, but let's just be really profitable. This, by the way, those of you that are watching on video, I asked Randy when we first logged in about the office that he's sitting in, and you said you guys built this building.
Yeah, we did. Mm-hmm.
When did you do that?
So we did this in 2016.
Oh, okay, 2016.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you kept this one.
Yes.
And you kept another one, and then the other 4.
Yeah, there were those releases. So this is the only one we built.
Nice.
You know, and it's been great. That's for sure.
Great. Well, this has been really good. I don't want to pollute this with any more stuff, because at the end of the day, I'm so impressed by what you did, because a lot of people can't do that, and it says a lot about you, and you know, being able to kind of put the ego aside and really got focused on, well, what's going to be best for my life, what's going to be best for my family, for my future, and I wish you nothing but continued success, and thank you for coming on and sharing. I think this is an important message. I mean, when you think back, when do you think you should have done it? Like, when you look back on it, do you think you should have done it sooner? Or what's the one thing that, you know, looking back now, what would you have done different?
The biggest thing, so when I started, it wasn't about growth. It was about being the best we can be in each market. And then at some point, growth took over, and I lost track of the thought of, before we grow, we have to be the best at what we are. I wish I would have stayed true to that belief, because we wouldn't have gone to some of the cities we would have gone to at that point. and we would have turned down more of what we took on at that point. I think that's probably the biggest one is if you're going to grow, you need to really own your market before you go on to that next market. And we didn't do that,
Yeah. Really good.
But I think that's because the builder work was when builders realize that you're willing to open up a new location, they dangle a carrot in front of you that's pretty enticing. And you're like, well, geez, it's $5 million right there, business. Okay, yeah, we can get started on that.
Yeah.
And the other part is when we opened up locations, we should have bought businesses back then instead of just starting a greenfield operation, because you just lose way too much. You can't develop a culture quick enough, that way. So
interesting. So you should have acquired a company rather than just starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's cool.
So.
All right, Randy. Well, thank you. I appreciate you doing this. We're actually doing this just a couple days before Christmas. You guys will hear it probably in February. But again, I wish you continued success. Thank you so much for being here. And to everybody listening, I can't stress enough how important the idea of revenue for vanity, profit for sanity. Really stay focused on your profitability. Revenue is great. It's great to be able to tell people that, oh, I got a $10 million business, but you know what? It's a whole lot better to tell people, yeah, I'm debt free. I've got some assets. I'm a multimillionaire from my business and blah, blah, blah. That's a much better way to approach than just doing a whole bunch of volume and hoping that some profit shakes out at the end.
Totally agree. I appreciate you having me. That's for sure.
Thanks. All right, everybody. So until next time, this is Brian Kaskavalsian with G4 Marketing Group, and this is the Wealthy Contractor Podcast. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Wealthy Contractor Podcast. Let me ask you, did it help you look at your business in a different way? Did it spark an idea or ideas that you hadn't thought of before? Do you have a list of action items that you can take and implement into your business or your life today? I really hope so. If it did, I'd like to ask you a favor. Would you leave a 5-star review of the podcast? By doing so, you'll help other contractors find the podcast more easily so that we can help them achieve more success, wealth, and freedom. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to the Wealthy Contractor Podcast so you get access to the latest episodes as soon as they're available. We're always striving to provide you with great content, so you don't want to miss what's coming up. In fact, if you haven't already, make sure you go to thewealthycontractor.com and get your free copy of my latest book, The 7 Secrets to Becoming a Wealthy Contractor. Just pay shipping and handling, and I'll take care of the cost of the book. And finally, a big thanks to G4 Marketing for sponsoring the Wealthy Contractor Podcast. For over 12 years now, G4 Marketing has been the secret back office relationship marketing team for hundreds of home improvement and home service businesses just like yours. You get the customer, and our proven system turns that customer into 5-star reviews and profitable repeat and referral business. If your home improvement or home services company completes at least 10 jobs per month, they have a solution that will work for you. To find out more, sign up for your free, no obligation, 10-minute discovery call at www.gfourmarketing.com/strategy. That's GFOUR marketing.com/strategy. Set your discovery call up today, and they'll help you set your business up for long-term profits and success. So until next time, this is Brian Kaskavalsian.